I think we heard in Matteo's presentation about how 9,000 people a year in the UK die from emissions caused by vehicles. And our next speaker is someone actually who has had a long journey with UK as real business. He joined us as a startup, as one guy with a crazy idea that he wanted to turn into a reality. And I think at the time you were trying to match a government grant. And we introduced you to your chairman, and off you've gone. Asha Bennett is going to talk to us about emission-free cities by 2025. And he might not say it, but I'll say it for him. You could have read about him in the Sunday Times this weekend alone. And he's also in the process of a fundraising. Over to you, Asha. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. I'm Asha Bennett. I am the founder of Tevva Motors. We make extended range electric trucks. And I just want to say thank you for this lineup, because I'm going to connect to Raanan, Matteo, and Ed in ways you'll see in a moment. So, emission-free cities by 2025. How about, that is an ambitious goal. Let's start with a more ambitious goal. How about emission-free cities 2017, this year? Every year, I'm sure most of the people know about Yom Kippur, there is a day that no vehicles are driving on the road in Israel. This is a major highway in Israel, completely empty. And on this day, in Tel Aviv, as an example, emissions go down 77 to 99%. This is actually the morning before Yom Kippur. It's quite low because there's no commerce. Yom Kippur is near zero. After Yom Kippur, a few people are driving to look for restaurants. And that's a normal commerce day. You'll see the different levels of commerce. Here's another. This is Ayalon, literally the most busiest road in Israel, empty on Yom Kippur. So how do we do emission cities now? Why don't we just not allow vehicles on the road? And believe me, that will clean up the road. It is a solution, but obviously it is not realistic. So how do we seriously remove emissions from the road without stopping people from doing what they want to do? This is, Matteo talked about it. People want to get to where they want to get. So, number one, we have to remember, we want to make sure that everyone gets to where they want to be. We want to make sure every piece of cargo, every package gets to where they want to be. I think that picture that you did, Raanan, of the screaming person that their package is late, it's very realistic. If we don't allow that, cleaning up cities won't actually happen. And this is the killer. It has to be cheaper than the current solutions. That's the way to get green, make it cheaper. So how do we remove all these emissions? I did what a lot of Israeli entrepreneurs do. I fell back on my military experience. I'm a former submarine officer. That's me on the bridge of a surface submarine. You see the periscopes in the back. I had more hair and a lot less of this, but it gave me a lot of experience. Eden talked about his military experience. It all connects in Israeli startups. And one thing I learned from Israeli submarines is we can go very long distances, very quietly, and with no emissions where it matters. So how do we make vehicles with no emissions where it matters? Because if you do some emissions in the countryside, it doesn't really affect our public health. So, number one, range extended electric vehicles, and number two, smart cities control software. What is a range extended electric vehicle? So to understand that, at the core, an range extended electric vehicle, just to clarify, this is a truck, and there's a reason I'm focusing more on trucks, because cars actually work as pure electric vehicles, because people don't drive more than an hour and a half a day on average. Trucks are driving 8 and 10 hours a day. They are not going to stop in the middle of the day for charging, and etc. So if you want uptake of trucks, it has to be range extended. So what is a range extended electric truck? At the core, it's an electric truck. So large lithium-ion batteries and an electric motor connected to the differential. Only the batteries and the electric motor are turning the wheels. So and you charge those large batteries at night, and you can go maybe 100 miles, completely zero emission. But the issue is the limits. Some days, if you have a bad driver, fully loaded truck, you're not going to get anywhere near that 100 miles. You're going to go much less. So what we saw operators do is they take their electric trucks and put them on very short routes. So it seems everyone is happy because short routes, an electric truck can do the job. But you kill the two advantages of electric vehicles. Advantage number one is saving money. But you save money on a per mile basis. And if you're only doing a few miles per day, who said we're doing 8 miles per day, per hour average in London? You're not saving a lot of money because it's measured per mile. The same thing for emissions. If you are replacing the dirty diesel trucks that were doing the short routes instead of replacing the dirty diesel trucks that were doing the long routes, you're not doing a lot for emissions. So a range extender, it's a tiny type of generator. And what it does is it recharges the battery if needed, not every day it's needed, on the go. So basically, trucks like this do not have limits. Range extenders are a type of generator. They're completely different than what we call ground-based generators. They don't have starter motors, they don't have alternators, they output DC, they run at completely different RPMs. So it's a different world. It's like comparing a Ferrari engine to a car engine. Similar, both have pistons, both use fuel, but everything else is different. Now, why not add software control to this? And this I learned specifically from submarine energy management. One thing I knew when I saw going out on a tour, we knew days and weeks ahead at every single point what level of charge the batteries would have. We knew where we would use our range extenders on the submarine. We didn't just meander around and say, hey, the battery's low, let's turn on the range extender. It was all pre-planned. So we have brought that technology to vehicles and trucks. The basic way of using, or the simple way of using a range extender would be the red line. Start with the battery full. When you reach a low threshold, turn on the range extender. Simple, it gets the job done. Charge up a few percentage points to run a few more miles, turn it on and off till you end the day. But what tends to happen in that scenario is you're running that range extender in the low emission zones. Well, simply said, the city centers typically. Now, by the way, Europe already has 150 low emission zones. London, in 6 weeks, the congestion charge is doubling if you have a dirty vehicle. China just announced no internal combustion engines by 2030. UK by 2040, except for Scotland that says 2032. So the world is really moving fast to zero emission solutions, on the condition that those solutions can actually get the job done, and the job is delivering. And so we take a completely different approach, and we predetermine every day where to use the range extender, optimizing to always use it outside city centers. And it's like a perfect solution. Now, because of this, no risk of running out of range, we claim range extended trucks are the cleanest of all trucks. But you might say a pure electric truck has zero emissions. A range extended truck has a little bit of emissions. Well, because of that zero risk of running out of range, these trucks are actually doing over double the zero emission range. So just on that, they are greenest. Number two, that tiny range extender is running at a single speed from a tiny 1.6 liter engine. So it's and at a very efficient predetermined speed. So it's already very low on emissions. And even that extra step, you take that software and predetermine to do it in the areas that's less sensitive. So put that all together, it is currently the greenest technology out there. It saves money, and there's nothing like saving money. This is a leasing deal for a range extended electric truck. So for a range extended electric truck, the blue, it's a leasing cost. It's a higher monthly leasing cost. A normal diesel truck would have a low leasing cost, but the fuel, you save so much on fuel from day one that you are saving money from day one. None of that, you'll save money over 4 or 5 years. Leasing solves that problem. And the farther you drive on a daily basis, the more money you are saving. Now, why not take this software and these concepts to even the next level? How about controlling all of a city's emissions via the cloud and apps? So this is a project in Leeds. Phase 1 is Leeds city vehicles are running around with mobile emission sensors, building what we call simply a Waze of where the emissions are, and then sending instructions to different vehicles, starting with a truck. This is a clean area, you can run a range extender. This is a dirty area, you have to be zero emission. Where we're taking it to the next level is complete control of every vehicle in Leeds to route it different ways in order to clean up the city. So I'll give an example. If it's a dirty day and you have a dirty old car, you will have to pay either a £15 emission charge, you will get a free park and ride instead and go into the town without emissions, or you'll be offered to pick up people for carpooling. It's a much more complicated and interesting project than that, but it will completely clean up the emissions, and we're glad to have Leeds as our first guinea pig. So, One more thing. So I've talked about range extenders. I've talked about for what they can do. Let's show where we can go even to a much deeper level. Why not take the range extender and make it zero emission in itself? And we are doing that by glycerin-fueled range extenders. Glycerin is completely non-toxic. It is non-flammable. It is carbon neutral, and in a very, very controlled combustion cycle, it has no NOx or emission or particulate matter emissions. So it's basically the holy grail of transportation. And that means, by the way, glycerin, we use it every day in our day-to-day thing. That means we can do this. We can drive from Metula to Eilat or from London to Edinburgh the whole way, zero emissions, without stopping to charge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asha, for a fascinating wrap-up to the first half of this morning.